Hey, welcome to this series on iOS XR 741 new features and products. Last week, they just kick-started the series with egress ACLs on Jericho 2, and today we talk about a feature and a product. It's Rakesh, our security specialist in the TME team, who is presenting ChipGuard on NCS 540, just after this.
Hello everyone, I am Rakesh Kandula, Technical Marketing Engineer handling iOS XR security. Today, I am going to introduce the new ChipGuard feature that's being onboarded on our NCS 540 small density routers. Before getting into the details of ChipGuard itself, we need to look at two important existing components of every iOS XR router. The first one is a Trust Anchor module chip that has been part of every iOS XR hardware for the last few years. This acts as an anchor to the entire trust chain of iOS XR. The second one is Cisco Secure Boot that ensures the integrity of the boot process. The moment an iOS XR router is powered up, the Trust Anchor module chip comes up, validates the microloader, and only then takes the CPU out of reset. This way, the first instruction executed by the CPU is validated for its integrity. And the same process continues for every stage of the boot process till we reach the iOS XR runtime. Now, this kind of a secure boot process anchored inside the hardware chip would have been enough to handle any threats around boot process. But then we thought, can we do more? And to understand that, we need to look at what could be those additional threat vectors. It's the supply chain attacks. With attackers having enough intent and resources, it is possible now to replace the CPU or ASIC on a router with malware-infested chips. And once that is done, the integrity of the hardware is compromised and no amount of software protections can come to the rescue. So, we are introducing the new ChipGuard feature that can help detect if there are counterfeit ASIC or CPU on your router. Let's look at it at a high level. The ChipGuard feature is part of our Cisco Secure Boot process now and is triggered during the BIOS part of the boot. If the ChipGuard verification fails, the router stops booting further. Let's understand more details of how the feature works. And the process starts right at the factory when the iOS XR router is being manufactured. During our manufacturing, we compute the SHA-256 hashes of the electronic chip IDs of both the CPU and the ASIC and program them inside the Trust Anchor module chip. This forms the imprint DB inside the Trust Anchor module, meaning the values that are imprinted during the manufacturing and cannot be modified during the lifetime of the router. Then, once the router is deployed in the field and is powered up, the ChipGuard feature kicks in during the BIOS. The BIOS recomputes the SHA-256 hashes of the electronic chip IDs again and then creates what is called as an observed DB, meaning the observed values of the hashes when the router is actually running. And then the BIOS compares the hashes fetched from the imprint DB and the observed DB and compares them to make sure they match. If there is a mismatch, it's an indication of a compromise that either the CPU or the ASIC have been changed and the secure boot process halts. The router continues to boot only if both the hashes match. This kind of a ChipGuard feature validation can validate either the CPU or the ASIC or both, depending on the capability of the underlying router. On our NCS 540 small density routers, only the CPU gets validated, whereas on a Cisco 8000 series, both the CPU and the ASIC are validated. For more details of the feature and other trustworthy features, please refer to our iOS XR 741 release notes and documentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rakesh. As usual, all of these details and much more are present in the companion blog post published on xrdocs.io/NCS5500/tutorials. You can find the link in the description below. Next week, it will be Pavan presenting packet per second based policers. That's a QoS feature, of course. See ya.